Hello everyone, I'm Parsa Mufti and I welcome you to News Platform's discussion on Is India's social justice paradigm under threat? The COVID-19 pandemic has unveiled the caste inequities and discriminations simmering just under our society. Historically, marginalized sections have increasingly become a target of violence and state indifference these past few years. The pandemic has aggravated this. But the media pays no attention and there's hardly any public outrage when Dalit students are driven to suicides, when Adivasis have to face atrocities, when the state withholds their scholarships and scale down budgets for their welfare, and when they die in sewage pits. Therefore, it is imperative to discuss whether India's social justice paradigm is under threat today. My first question is to Raju sir. Sir, of late, one is hearing from various quarters that social justice paradigm in India is under threat. What are your thoughts on the social justice paradigm under the NDA regime when compared to the UPA regime? And what is the main change which is evident?
I think we need to first of all understand what do we mean by social justice paradigm. Social justice paradigm proactively promotes empowerment of the marginalized sections, particularly the scheduled castes, Adivasis, OBCs and women, so that there are no inequities, no exploitation and no discrimination in the society. The social justice paradigm rests on three pillars: one, social, economic and political. Each pillar symbolizing the policies, programs and the legislations the government of the day is promoting to secure the intended outcomes of the social justice paradigm. And the Indian Constitution provides the vision for the social justice paradigm to really grow and move forward. Since independence, successive Congress governments have put in place very firmly the social justice paradigm by bringing in slew of policies, programs and legislations. If you look at the kind of legislations that the independent India has seen to ensure that there is equity, there is justice and the weaker sections are protected from exploitation, you would find that the parties in the Congress party in government was very serious about really strengthening the social justice paradigm. Whether it was Untouchability Offences Act 1955, Protection of Civil Rights Act, Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989, or provision of reservations in the education institutions or in the jobs, reservations in promotions, scheduled caste subplan, tribal subplan, scholarships to the students, and land reforms that were brought in this country in a big way, and also various other anti-poverty programs. All these things really reflect the government's commitment to make sure that the weakest in the society are really brought forward, inequities are reduced, and there is equity in the society. And the UPA government in the year 2004 to 14 has gone a few steps forward and strengthened the social justice paradigm by bringing in rights-based legislations, whether it was Right to Education, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, Forest Rights Act, Right to Education, National Rural Health Mission, National Food Security Act, Street Vendors Protection Act, or Land Acquisition Resettlement Rehabilitation Act 2013. So all these measures clearly indicate that there was an intention to really translate what is there in the Constitution during the Congress Party's rule. But when you take during the last 6 years, the social justice paradigm is not only under attack, I would say that the social justice paradigm is demolished. For example, if you see the current pandemic as one single example. We would find that in terms of infections, mortality, loss of jobs, or lack of access for attending the online classes, it is essentially the scheduled caste Adivasis who are suffering most. But government during the last 6 months has not so far brought in any measure to make sure that these sections are less put to less suffering during this pandemic period. So that shows that there is no commitment to social justice paradigm in this present government. So the significant change in the NDA government is that there is no recognition to the social security paradigm. There is no conviction that the government needs to really protect this social security paradigm, and there is no willingness to listen to the voice of the last person. So that this is my view on the social justice paradigm in the present NDA government.
Right, sir. Professor Mungekar, a while ago, various Dalit and Adivasi students argued that the NDA government was withholding around 13,000 crores of the post-matric scholarships, and Dr. Ambedkar started in 1945. Is this true, and why do you think the NDA government would withhold so much?
See, the question is, first of all, I congratulate you and thank you for your platform for organizing this discussion, because it is extremely important. See, what happens is, in 2014, when BJP came to power, first in coalition government and later in 2019 with their own majority, the most important change could be described as counter-revolution. BJP's coming to power in 2014 is not just transfer of power from one political party to another political party, because political parties already also underwent a change and different parties rule differently. But since 1951 or 1952 first general election till 2014, when this government came to power, all the government upheld the constitutional values. For example, Janata government was there. Even BJP's government under Vajpayee, the parameters of the Indian constitutions were intact. But then, what I call counter-revolution in 2014, Modi-led government of the BJP doesn't believe in the constitutional values at all. It's not the question only of the social justice paradigm. Say liberty, equality, fraternity and justice. These are the four parameters of the Indian Constitution enshrined in the preamble. The entire Constitution, which Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru moved the objectives resolution on 9th December 1946. The entire Constitution is the explanation as to how to secure these four objectives: liberty, equality, justice and fraternity. Now, since BJP doesn't believe in social justice at all, these marginalized sections, particularly scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, the women, they don't fit into their concept of framework of Hindu nation. Hindu nation is exclusively the power which is concentrated in the hands of 10% or 8% of the upper caste Brahmins. For that matter, I'm not talking social justice only in terms of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, but how they are doing with the minorities, which constitute around 15% of the total population, second largest Muslim population in the world. That's why what happens is, as Mr. Raju, my good friend, explained already, the total structure, the total milieu of this social justice paradigm he was just mentioning. And then we find basically that all the schemes which were there for the what is called development and empowerment and entitlement of the marginalized sections, they are doing away with. For example, in context of what Raju just now mentioned, you'll find that when I was member of the Planning Commission, we introduced a scheme of Rajiv Gandhi National Fellowship for Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes. That is, those will be doing MPhil and PhD from scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. For MPhil, they will be getting around 15,000 rupees per month for 2 years, and for PhD, 25,000 per month for 3 years. This was the scheme, and it was the most ambitious education scheme for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe or marginalized sections anywhere in the world. Recently, I inquired from the University Grant Commission. They said that nearly 18,000 scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, boys and girls, they have acquired MPhil and PhD. Now they are doing away with that. They are strangulating the scheme. Now, for example, government post-matric scholarship you just now mentioned, which was brought before government, independence. It was in 1944. British government brought that after Ambedkar insisted for that. And that one scheme, Government of India post-matric scheme, would enable the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe to take education. The entire post-independence generation of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, which is educated, is just the outcome of that one Government of India post-matric scheme. So they are totally nullifying. They are not revising. I had suggested with the UPA government, I was arguing that this scholarship amount should be linked to the cost of living index. The scholarship should be deposited in the accounts of the students so that there should not be any kind of irregularities or misappropriation. And then comprehensively, the scholarship should be revised not only in terms of the cost of living index, but in totally, it should be revised so far the base level is concerned. They are not doing anything of that kind. Reservations in promotions, which have been accepted in the constitutional judgment of what is called K. Nagaraj judgment. Okay, that when the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes are inadequately represented in the government jobs, there should be promotions. Okay, reservations and promotions. Now 6 lakh scheduled caste and scheduled tribe employed there only in Maharashtra. There might be more than 2 millions at the all India level. They are not doing any kind of that. Then you will find the scheduled caste scheduled caste plan and tribal sub plan. Raju knows that I was in charge of the planning commission of these schemes, and we made mandatory to the state governments that all the state government should be mandatory for what is called for implementation of the scheme. Now the thrust of the scheduled caste subplan and tribal subplan is that population proportion allocation of funds of the budget. So I suppose if 10% scheduled caste population in Maharashtra, 10% of the budget of Maharashtra should be allocated for scheduled caste. Now these guidelines were issued in September 2005. Not a single state government did. Congress was absolutely clear about it because Congress was the outcome. Congress evolved, and all the policies of the Congress party that were pursued after independence, they were outcome of the India's ethos of the freedom movement, social justice, the aspirations of various sections of the society, and marginalized section is not small. Say for example, 15%, 20% scheduled caste, 10% scheduled tribe, 30%. Then around for 50% OBCs, that is 80%. And then all the entire women class except 10% literate women, those who are financially self-sufficient because of the job and education. They also are victim of gender discrimination. All women in the country, they are subjected to gender discrimination irrespective of their caste, language or economic status. But moreover, scheduled caste women, they are subjected to all 3 kinds of discrimination: caste discrimination, gender discrimination, and economic discrimination. And then when you are talking of social justice paradigm, in terms of the majority and politics of the BJP, I simply can't neglect the topic and relevance of the insecurity that the Muslims are subjected to after 2014. Continuously, let's not discuss only in terms of economic privileges and the policies. Continuously after 2014, Muslims in the country are cornered and their patriotism is challenged, as if every Muslim in the country is want of or in short of patriotism. So this means what? After 2014, social justice paradigm is under threat, is demolished, as Raju just now mentioned. Your concept of nationhood is becoming exclusive, that only particular community people will be ruling this country. Then all your social privileges, for example, Common Citizenship Act, they're talking about, or but domicile. I mean, the havoc is going on. That's why I consider that 2014 NDA regime, as against the regime of the previous government, including the non-Congress government, is absolutely counter-revolution. The last point in this matter is, unfortunately, there is no resistance to this. There is no organized rejection, organized opposition, organized fight against this counter-revolution. I will give you one simple illustration. There are nearly 135 members of parliament, both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. 15% members of Lok Sabha, they are coming from scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. I was member of Rajya Sabha for 6 years. I watched their performance. Unfortunately, it is very saddening to mention that the extent to which they should have got the spirit of fighting this injustice, that is not there. That's why two things are there. One, there is counter-revolution. Social justice is virtually demolished. Nationalism, pluralism is demolished. And there is no organized resistance to this kind of counter-revolution. That's India today at the crossroad. India today is basically at in such a crisis that if these things are allowed to degenerate and deteriorate in this direction, okay, without substantial and strong opposition from the political parties, intellectual, academicians, and marginalized sections, the country will go to hell, and that is the major worry for a person like me.
Right, sir. Beena ma'am, PM Modi said that 55% of all accounts opened under the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana were opened by scheduled castes. Data shows that only 11% of the Mudra loans went to Dalits and 4% went to Adivasis. What is the cause of this mismatch?
So I think a lot has said about the 2014 when Modi came to power and this government came to power, how the shifts have taken place. But before I go into the Mudra scheme and the data that we have, just to say that a lot of data during this government is manipulated, and they're using this data to give a different picture of what is actually the ground reality on the ground. If you look at the increase in violence in the last, since 2014, there's been an increase in violence to a certain extent that even during COVID, during this time, people are actually telling that Dalits have COVID. So there are villages in Andhra where we have, looked at where they've cordoned off the entire village. They're socially boycotted that entire village so that people cannot come out, saying that the Dalits in this village are all affected by COVID, so you cannot use the main access road, no? So that increase in violence has increased more so during COVID, and especially after 2014, we see that increase. So on one hand, the violence and atrocities are continuing. On the other hand, they're manipulating this data to show how much they are, supporting Dalit and Adivasis on the ground. The reality is that I have the data here with me. Total 45, one second. Yeah. Total loans is 52% has gone to general category. 16%, this is number of beneficiaries from each of these communities, about 16% from SC, 6% from ST, and 26% to OBC. So if you actually add up the OBC, SC, and ST, it comes to about 50, little below 50%. In terms of how many, what is the percentage of amount sanctioned again this? Again, there are three different kinds of loans, below 5 lakhs, between 5 and 10, and then between 50 and above. If you look at these loans, the smallest amounts are actually sanctioned for the Dalits and Adivasis. The larger amount, the loans that are the larger amount loans, which are called, I think, just one second, they're called Shishu, Kishore and Tarun. So Shishu is below 50,000. Yeah, 50,000 actually. Kishore is 50,000 to 5 lakhs, and then Tarun is above 5 lakhs. So the above 5 lakhs loans are mostly to other.
General category. Yeah.
Exactly. But if you look at the lower, the smaller loans between the Shishu and Kishore, this is what is actually given. So if you look at that, the number of beneficiaries under this, or if you, the total amount, again, 68% of the percentage of amount is sanctioned to the general category. And only 9% out of this is actually, in terms of the percentage of the funds that are given, is for the SC and 3% for ST and about 19% for OBC. I think that when they recently laid the foundation stone for the Ram temple, they said that the first person they gave prasad to is a Dalit family, These kind of drama that they're creating around, really this is drama only, because on one side you're giving pedas and prasad, on the other side I don't think a Dalit will ever be able to enter that temple, So these kind of dichotomy within this government is extremely, I think we need to analyze this critically look at this and see how that these are just lip service. They're just doing lip service, and they're using this data. Many people are not going to go and see how many people, just that he said 55%, everybody will, he's giving 55% of the total amount to Dalits is absolutely wrong data. I don't know what can happen after this video goes public, but at the risk of it, I will have to say that the data is not our data. We've analyzed the government data and it proves totally against what they're claiming it to be. But not just this, if you look at all the allocations and amounts that are actually coming up, you will see that after the plan and the non-plan budgets were merged, there is a much more space for them to actually. Earlier, at least we knew that this much used to go for the schemes itself and the rest of the amount used to go for, salaries, EPF, PF. Now what they've done, because they have merged, there's a lot more space for them to actually play around with these numbers and much more difficult for us to analyze where these actually numbers are going. So I think these are just a play of numbers and drama around the fact that they're just paying a lip service by doing this.
Right, ma'am. Professor Mongega, coming back to you, the recently released NEP document mentions public funding only twice, social justice thrice, and does not mention reservation at all. Do you think the NEP will adversely impact SCs, STs, and OBCs?
So, see, basically what happens is they want to do away with the reservation policy altogether. They don't believe in reservation policy at all. Because what happens is the entire communal politics of BJP, which began aggressive Hindutva or aggressive Hindu communal politics in 1992, which prompted Mr. Lal Krishna Advani to embark on Rath Yatra, was caused by VP Singh's implementation of Mandal Commission's report. If you see the statistics, you'll find that and reservation is not economic issue. Reservation is basically a political issue, in the sense that these economic entitlements cannot come into reality unless you have got the share in political power. And yesterday only there was an article by Jeffrey Lott that Mandal Commission's report was a silent revolution. Now, whatever pros and cons of that, they believe, BJP doesn't believe in reservation because they say that we are having samarasata. Now, samarasata means all the social sections will be not equal, but they will have the sense of equality. I mean, they will be submerged with each other. Samarasata in the sense, now it is the Marathi word, but say for example, husband and wife, okay. Now, whatever their differences, whatever amount of inferiority husband may be imposing on his wife, but they should be submerged within each other. And it is all rubbish. Because without having equal rights, without protecting equal identity or similar identity of woman as an independent entity, and that is basically considered as equality, it's submerging within each other. It means all the five fingers, let them remain unequal, but they are helping each other. That is the system they are talking about, Varna system. And recently, as Bina just now mentioning, Mr. Bhagavat mentioned one shloka from Manusmriti on 5th of August when they wait for foundation laying down stone. I am not against any caste, including Brahmin, Maratha, Jat, or Lingayat, or anybody for that matter. But the shloka means, it is now being in wide circulation in Maharashtra. The shloka means Brahmin community alone is virtuous. Brahmins alone will show the real path to the world. And all the virtues in the world of good human beings, they are embodied only in the Brahmins. Now this means historically, because of Manusmriti, because of Varna Vyavastha, because of Chaturvarnya, because of caste system, see, basically what happens is reservation is threatening the monopoly of their power for hundreds and thousands of years. And all upper castes are unfortunately together. And that's why Ambedkar was telling that progressive people, progressive Hindus and reactionary Hindus, they are two arms of the same body, and when one is in danger, the other is bound to defend. Unfortunately, this entire crisis, okay, of social justice has arisen because OBCs, or socially and educationally backward classes as they are called in the constitution, they are Shudras. All OBCs, all mandal commissions, implementation, beneficiaries, they are Shudras. Okay, but now they are engrossed in the idea of Hindutva without distinguishing between Hindu religion and Hindutva. Hindu religion is a prayer system. It is a belief system. It is a kind of relationship between God and between and human being. While Hindutva is political ideology, it is strategy to consolidate Hindus in the country primarily against their identified enemies, that is Muslims. And the OBCs, I am trying to tell them again and again and again that in 1923, V.D. Savarkar first the thesis of Hindutva, arguing there that Hindus and Muslims, they are two separate nationalities. Indian Muslim League under Jinnah made the resolution of Pakistan as a separate nation only in Lahore session of All India Muslim League is 1906. And so the crisis is internalization. The people, those who are real victims of the absence of reservation or the non-implementation, I had asked the question in the parliament that what is the percentage of scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, OBCs in the all four grades of the bureaucracy, class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4. You'll find that exactly caste and Varna hierarchy, Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra, the same hierarchy was reflected in your bureaucratic order. All the reservations were filled in 15% in your class 4. Now that is also not being filled in because of contractual system, all sweepers and peons, etc. Contractual, 13% or 12% in class 3, 8 or 9% in class 2, and virtually 1 or 2% in class 1. This means, theoretically, let us try to understand that the capitalist development that we started from 1947, starting even from the Congress rule and the Varna system, they are parallel to each other. Let us take the case of women. It is very, very, see, 33% reservation political parties promised, and the bill was passed in the legislature, that is Vidhan Sabha and Lok Sabha. I am asking all the political parties that why they are not given 33% seats to all women in their own political parties so far the elections are concerned. Only Gram Panchayat, they are mandatories. But the Gram Panchayat also mandatories. Only day before yesterday, I heard that in one of the villages, Dalit Sarpanch was not allowed to raise the three-color flag on 15th of August. That's why the question is, it is so complex society, and unfortunately, as Ambedkar used to say, why there was no revolution against the caste system? Because caste system has created a false illusion in the minds of every caste that till somebody is below you, you don't bother about somebody is above you. That's why every caste has been satisfied with the ego that you are superior to someone. And this is exactly happening in case of in your bureaucracy. Because what happens as let us know the theoretical crisis, the philosophical crisis, as nationalism, as patriotism in India is being considered by the BJP and the Sangha Parivar based on one's religion. The efficiency of an individual also is considered to be based on the caste. Schedule, as Nabina just now mentioning, they can go to any extent. They can now see us saying that one village in Andhra Pradesh, they all are suffering from COVID. Tomorrow they will say the COVID has been affected only because of the presence of scheduled caste or untouchables in the country. I mean, they can go to any extent. And they do indoctrination. And you know Goebbels' theory that and they have got, what is their capacity? 60 lakh volunteers. 60 lakhs. Okay? 600 or 6,000 organizations. Virtually today, I am on the public domain. Today, virtually, through the proxy of Bharatiya Janata Party, Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangha is ruling the country. And that is the tragedy. Till Vajpayee, this was not allowed to happen. But now the distinction between the political party and their parent organization is absolutely disappearing. And that is the reason that all your reservation policy, in a private sector, for example, I was the first to argue in 2002 in my Manchester University Ambedkar Memorial Lecture that there should be reservation also in the private sector to compensate the loss of the jobs to the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, because the state role and the public sector's roles in the economy is shrinking further and further and further. But the question is, when the reservations are not implemented in the state sector or even in the public sector, then introduction of the reservation in the private sector, that is distant. But then they are bent upon because they do not want potential competition from the scheduled caste. See, scheduled caste today, they are not the same slave mentality as they were in 1947. Today, they are in the mood not to accept injustice. There is no organized movement, I understand. But then they are not that kind of subordinate or inferior mentality. Okay. There are doctors, engineers, professors, lawyers, vice chancellors, members of planning commission, senior servant. Dalit literature in Maharashtra, they have created their own literature. It is a landmark of their development. They want equilibrium, that is static society where there is no competition to the positions and the privileges of the upper caste from the lower caste. And the entire their logistics and network and strategy is created just to prevent this kind of potential threat, and they will be living in subordinate positions.
Right, sir. Beena ma'am, PM Modi consistently talked about Swachh Bharat for 5 years, and yet manual scavenging continues. 282 sanitation workers have died while cleaning sewers and septic tanks in the country between 2016 and 2019. And additionally, the budget for self-employment scheme for rehabilitation of manual scavengers was cut by 93% between 2014 and 2019. What is the reality?
Yeah, so just to give an example of what is happening, and I'll say two instances from the ground. One is in Bundelkhand, we identified about 800 women engaged in manual scavenging. And at first, the state denied that there is no manual scavenging in the state. But when we showed them videos, we took pictures, we had, the women engaged in manual scavenging speak about it. So we took all this, and finally the district collectorate agreed. And that first, under the act, they have to give a compensation. So we gave them the list of the number and they gave the compensation. But after that, they are supposed to provide skilling, for livelihood options, which is also in the act. They were not worried about that. What they were more worried about is the dry latrines that they were cleaning, to break those down and actually make toilets, because they have a target under the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan that they want to make so many toilets. So they're not worried that these 800 women are without jobs, because they have stopped cleaning somebody else's shit. They're more worried about how many they have to reach the number of target of toilets that they have promised in the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. This is my first case. The second case that during the COVID, again, women engaged in manual scavenging were without, food and any ration for many days. We made a list of that, and we decided to distribute ration to these communities, but the district official did not accept. So through another organization, we had said that we have to actually inform the local district office. So when we informed, he immediately called my team in Bundelkhand, this is in Bundelkhand area, saying that how is it he's not worried that this many women and families are without food for 3-4 days. His question was, how dare you show that there are manual scavengers, women engaged in manual scavengers in UP. So he was more enraged about the fact that we have shown that there are women, who are engaged in this practice and who have not been without ration for 2-3 days. He never asked us why we are providing the ration or can we do something. He was more worried. In 25 years of my career in UP, there has been no record of, women or men engaged in manual scavenging. And we were shocked that this was the statement that was coming. And later they stopped us. They didn't allow us to, distribute the ration. They didn't give us permission. And then they said they will do it. And we are now following up what's been happening. So these are the kind of issues that are happening that, one, they're not even accepting it is there. Second, in this whole SBM Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, SBA plan, there is nothing about manual scavenging. They're not, they don't think that is critical to actually having a clean India. It's not critical for them to talk about the women and men and the 282 deaths that in the last, I think the analysis, if you break it down, it's about one person dying in the sewers every 5 or 6 days. If every week, I think one person. They're not worried about that. They're worried that they have this big plan that they've pumped in so much of money, and their only thing is to build toilets, and they think by building toilets they can have a clean India. I think totally. My other thing is that, if they're thinking, if Prime Minister himself has said that, doing manual scavenging is a spiritual exercise, isn't that what he said once? How are they going to even think that this is a demeaning practice and they have to remove this practice, Because ultimately at the end of the day, it's not their children or their families that are going. It is our sisters and our brothers and, our children from the community who are going. Children are without education. Children, within the act also they have to give. There are schemes that they have to give special education facilities to the children of the women and men engaged in manual scavenging. Regarding the budget, wherever there is, where they have to put in, for example, if you look at the post-metric scholarship also, as years and years go, they're reducing the budget. It's almost now come to I think it's 3,000 this year, the post-metric scholarship, I have the details. So what I'm trying to say is, even for manual scavenging, it's true, it's decreased. I think 110 crores is what they have allocated. And for post-metric scholarship, it's come to, I think, some 3,000 or 4,000 crores to be exact. Yeah, 3,347 in 17-18 and 2,987 crores in 2021. So all the major critical schemes for the development of Dalits and Adivasis, the amount or the allocation is reducing. And from this allocation, if you actually look at the utilization, it might be further reduced, which means this 2,900 is also not going down to the community. That also, even this 110 crores is not going actually, because if they're really looking at rehabilitation of women and men engaged in manual scavenging, I think we will have much higher budgets to be allocated. So I think somewhere there is a mismatch within what they want to do or what they're claiming to do and what is actually happening on the ground. all social sector schemes, budgets are being reduced year by year. Of course, having proportionate allocation, what Mungekar said earlier, has never happened in any government. That has not happened across, in the last, I think, 45 years since we have had this plan. It has never happened. But the utilization is much more worse, and where that money is being utilized is also problematic. And I think we need to continue to push that. It is a shame. It is a real shame that in a country like India, which is one of the fastest growing economies in the world, that we still have men and women going down sewers, men going down sewers without any protective gear, and women engaged in manual scavenging. This, I think, is a blot to this country. It's a gross violation of human rights. My just one point I'll say, and then I'll stop, is that let us also see and acknowledge that during the COVID, the entire country was under lockdown, but the only people who kept the streets, the sewers, your toilets clean were the Dalits. We have to face that. We have to say it over and over and over again, because this country is clean. This country is kept clean only because we went out, risked our life during COVID. Many of them did not get salaries. Many of them did not have any protective gear. Still continue to work despite the entire country in lockdown. And not a word was said, neither by the Prime Minister or not by the government.
Right, ma'am. My last question is to Raju, sir. Sir, the atrocities against scheduled castes and scheduled tribes have exploded. On one end, mob lynchings by non-state actors, and on the other, organized state repression, like in the Bhima Koregaon case. Why are political parties shying away from taking a stand?
I think as far as Congress party is concerned, whenever there has been an instance of atrocity, the Congress leadership has always been in the forefront to raise the issue, stand by the victim, and to put pressure on the government to secure justice to the victims. In fact, Mr. Rahul Gandhi ji has been to literally every instance of atrocity that has happened, major atrocity that has happened in the country, and he has raised these issues. A few years back, when the Supreme Court has given a judgment which literally has taken away the core elements of Prevention of Atrocities Act, diluting that act, it was the Congress party under the leadership of Rahul ji led a delegation to President of India and appealed to the President to see that the Parliament passes a legislation to annul the judgment of the Supreme Court to restore the power of the Prevention of Atrocities Act. It's a different matter. Later, the Supreme Court itself has actually restored the original status of Prevention of Atrocities Act. During the last 6 years, the present government's track record of safeguarding the human rights of Dalits by effectively implementing the Prevention of Atrocities Act is very, very bleak. I don't think that in the states, the mandatory vigilance and monitoring committees to be held by the collectors or by chief ministers are happening. The mandatory provisions that are there very clearly in the Atrocities Act, Amendment Act that was brought out in the year 2015. It was actually an ordinance that was brought out by UPA government in 2013 December. Later in 2015, the amendments to the Atrocity Act was brought in as an act in 2015. None of the provisions of the amended Act of Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989 are today implemented. For example, there are supposed to be special exclusive courts in the districts, special and exclusive public prosecutors. There is a time limit fixed for completing the investigation. There is a time limit fixed for completing the judicial process, and the amended provisions of the Act has very clearly defined what are the various elements of the willful negligence of the various authorities who are vested with the responsibilities to implement Atrocities Act. But none of these provisions are used to really make sure that the officials respect the provisions of the Atrocities Act. Similarly, the Act has very clear provisions in the shape of Charter of Rights for the victims and witnesses. None of these provisions are implemented seriously. Never there has been a serious review at the government level. Never there has been any effort to educate the people and the civil society activists on these provisions of this Act. So consequently, today though there is a very, very powerful legislation that is in place to protect the human rights of Dalits, there is a very clear procedure laid down whenever there are such instances happen, how the administration has to move. But unfortunately, nothing is happening because the government, which is mandated to implement this Act, is not really taking it seriously. Government is not only taking it seriously, whenever there are instances of atrocities, condemnation from the highest political authorities also is not being heard. So consequently, those perpetrators of atrocities, they feel that they have a tacit support to carry on with this kind of instance. So that is the reason as why there is an explosion in the atrocity activities. There is a greater degree of willful negligence on the part of officers, and the conviction of these cases in the courts is coming down, and consequently the safeguard that is provided to the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes from these atrocities is literally not there today, unfortunately.
Right, sir. It is clear from what our panelists have told us that when the deprivation and destitution of a large mass are growing, while the economic and political power of a minority social elite is on a rapid surge, it is imperative to bring the discourse of social justice back. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.